It is impossible to define grace, because grace is another word for the divine, for the self. It's like divine will. We come to know what is divine will. Once we know the divine, then we understand that everything is the divine will. And when we realize the divine, we come to understand what is grace. Everything is grace, because everything is divine. But for the identified individual being, it appears like, yes, at some points of time, grace manifests itself. And what is impossible for the human being at the level of effort or the level of determination happens through grace. So grace transcends your limitations, your determination. And what you aspire for is realized beyond your efforts. But grace is ever present. The simple fact of being here, this existence, is grace. So we should not understand grace as something miraculous. It also happens within the phenomenality. But everything is grace. It's another word for self, the true self. How we invite grace? By surrendering, by emptying ourselves. The more you surrender, the more you disappear to yourself, you invite grace. In the sense that you become aware that everything is grace. But for that you have to empty yourself. Otherwise you will attribute everything to yourself, to your own effort, to your own merits. Nothing happens to you because you don't exist. Everything happens through grace. Grace is what is doing everything. Grace is the Shakti, the energy, the Prakriti. But we believe that we are a separate doer. An entity that can decide, that is to some extent in control of his or her own life. And by believing that, we separate ourselves from grace. So when we pray the divine for grace, we actually abandon ourselves to the divine. So the highest prayer is, may thy will be done. Not my will, but thy will be done. And by renouncing to ourselves, we invite grace. Or we become aware that everything is grace. So when we say that the final recognition, the Atma Sakshatkar, can happen only through grace, it is true. But it means, in other words, that we have completely surrendered ourselves. And you know that Shahanagati or Samarpandi, surrender, is very important in the teachings of Bhagwan Ramana. Because without this surrender, the final recognition cannot happen. Only when you get rid of your identity, your borrowed identity, you recognize your true identity, and this is grace. That grace was ever present, but we had superimposed our personal identity on it, and so we were not aware of grace. So everything is grace, the grace of Atman, the Atma Kripa of Bhagwan, Kripa, the grace of the divine being, the supreme person, grace of the Guru, Guru Kripa. Grace is one. This manifestation is grace.
Including suffering?
Yes, if the suffering will bring you on this path, then it is absolute grace. Only when we suffer, you see, we come to bring our attention to what is essential. If we don't suffer, if we just enjoy this life, we may never know who or what we are. So suffering is also a grace. Yeah. In the pure consciousness, in the absolute consciousness, in Chit, there is no grace. Grace is the manifestation of this consciousness in this world. So that it is the same. It has the same essence like the Shakti. It is consciousness in movement, manifested consciousness, Saguna Brahman. There is no grace in the Nirguna Brahman.